everyone. I'm Benjamin Lindsay, managing editor here at Backstage. Really happy that everyone could join us today. As you know, we have a nice little sit down coming up with Ross Stewart and Tomm Moore, the filmmakers behind Wolfwalkers, which is now nominated for the Oscar for Best Animated Film, and just the latest Oscar-nominated film out of Cartoon Saloon. So we'll be diving into the craft of animation, the craft of voice acting, and also just what this film is all about. So thank you for tuning in. We have about 150 participants, and I'll keep an eye as we get more, but I guess I'll bring you guys in. So Tomm and Ross, thank you so much for joining us today. As I said, congratulations on the Oscar nomination, and this is a treat to have you sitting with us.
Thanks very much for having us. Cheers.
So what's this last week been like for you? I mean, it was such great news to see Monday, all the love coming out of this film. I know it's just the latest Oscar nomination.
Oh yeah, it's no big deal. We're bored. We just are like so bored about it. And
yeah,
not
right.
Excited at all.
But a good week overall.
Yeah, well, sure. It was St. Patrick's Day in the middle of the week as well, so it was a great week.
Yeah,
felt like a little bit of weekend. It feels like Monday again or something.
Yeah, coming back around. Now, Ross, I know that this is your feature film or directorial feature film debut. You've worked previously with Cartoon Saloon. Just to get things started, I'd love to hear how you and Tomm first came to work together, and kind of how you came to the decision to co-direct Wolfwalkers. What did that journey look like?
I think the first time that Tomm and myself worked together was probably when we were 11, because we've been friends since we were 11. We sat beside each other in secondary school.
We were working on a Batman comic, I remember. I don't know if we ever finished it, but we were pretty serious about that Batman comic.
Yeah, and we worked on another kind of compilation comic when we were about 16 or 17 in Young Irish Filmmakers that we got about 2,000 copies printed, and we tried to distribute them.
We sold about two.
We sold about 2 copies, and so that we were left with boxes and boxes of this crappy comic. That was the first time that we worked together. But no, I was always kind of more interested in like art direction and backgrounds and things like that when I started. So for Secret of Kells, that's what I was doing. I was art directing, and then I was doing concept design and visual development for other projects. And then Roger Allers' feature The Prophet came in about 2015, just as Song of the Sea was kind of winding down, I think. And would have been 2015, maybe 2014. But Tomm was asked to direct a segment of it, and he knew that he wouldn't be able to do it because he was still on Song of the Sea. So he asked me to co-direct, because then he could manage the two, and
on the credit and do half the work.
So Tomm and myself, we spent about a year doing that, I think, and it was a really beautiful project because it was a very poetic, artistic piece. We were left very free to do anything we wanted for it. Because that went kind of well, we thought, well, let's try and do something bigger. Let's do a feature. And Tomm wanted to kind of finish off the Song of the Sea and Secret of Kells, 2 films with a third of that similar vein. So that's how we started kind of like approaching the project, and that's how we started, coming up with the idea based on that. So that was about 7 or 8 years ago now.
Yeah, been in the works for 7 or 8 years, but obviously the friendship goes back much longer than that. I love hearing that.
Yeah, way back.
Yes, yeah. Now Cartoon Saloon has really found itself. You mentioned kind of this thematically similar trio of releases over the years. How is it that you kind of narrowed down, and maybe Tomm, this is best for you to answer, but how is it that you feel Cartoon Saloon has kind of found its identity within the animation space? I feel like it's so unique. It tackles 2D animation and with similar themes across projects. How's it that you kind of developed your MO, your voice as an artist, and what you wanted to do with the company?
Yeah, well, I'm only like 1/3 of the company owner and one small part of a company of 160 people. So the company isn't just me. But I think when I talk about the studio in general, apart from just like my own career within it, it has been definitely making movies that probably wouldn't get made elsewhere. Like we've definitely been looking for projects that are, you know, that there's a reason to produce independently, that you're not likely to see, you know, they're not like super commercial a lot of the time, but they're not like uncommercial, but you know what I mean? They're not like an obvious thing to make into a movie, you know, a child in Taliban occupied Afghanistan, or, you know, whatever. It's a
Maybe the
feature film.
first idea for Secret of Kells might have been a little bit not commercial. Yeah.
A
Back
little
when it
bit
was
not
Rebel.
commercial, yeah, you know, monks for kids, you know, monks making a book, you know, but you know, that kind of stuff. And then I guess we've really focused on hand drawn, and I think for some reason there's been this kind of trend that we've been lucky to catch a wave of, which is where handcrafted stuff have become kind of cool again, and people are appreciating it because CG has become so dominant, and so like it's in every part of the entertainment world. We're just used to stuff being computer generated. So the fact that we really focused on hand drawn and what that can do, and that aesthetic and illustration as an inspiration rather than photography, I think that's helped us stand out a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think, I mean, from your perspective in the industry, to speak to that trend of things becoming cool again? What do you think is behind that? Why the newfound appreciation for such an old art form?
I don't know, isn't it like people are into vinyl and people are into like zines again, even though you can read any comic you want online, but you like to have a zine. I don't know, I think we're all just a bit fed up with the mass production and the kind of digital, you know, Leica movies are really trendy too. Wes Anderson makes movies like that are very, they feel, you know, I think there's a need for that artist's hand, that touch of a human, like it's kind of, I think the arts and craft movement was a response to industrialization at the beginning of the 20th century. And I think that we're going through something similar at the beginning of the 21st century.
Yeah, because back in the 80s and 90s, like with the latest technology coming out in computer generated imagery and manipulation, like that was like so cool, and everyone wanted to get on that boat, on that train. But now it's kind of reached like a high point in that it seems like what can be done with CG is being done, and it doesn't really have as many places to go yet. It doesn't seem like, oh, this is so much untapped potential. So maybe that's why there's a resurgence back to, like, you know, seeing the thumbprints in plasticine and seeing like the mark making on paper, seeing that handmade aesthetic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unplugged gigs, you know.
Yeah.
exactly that. Now we have an audience today of kind of filmmakers, creators, actors. For people who are interested in this animated space, I'm sure you get this question all the time, but for people who want to follow in your footsteps, who want to work for studios like Cartoon Saloon, what's kind of the first steps that you would advise early career animators take to kind of develop their own career in the industry?
Well, I'd say, I mean, it's kind of like the same advice that you'd give maybe graduates, recent graduates, and that, like it's so easy to make short films now, to make little animated pieces now. You don't need like a huge amount of equipment or hardware or anything like that. You can really, like, teenagers can make animated movies now just on their mobile phone and stuff. So I think the more content that you make and get out there, then like the more you will learn as an artist, and also the more exposure you'll get. And then if you want to get into a studio that's doing it, like getting your foot in the door, I think is the hardest part. But then once you're inside the studio, I think it's very easy to like move from one department into another, or it's easier anyway, let me say. But I think like finding what department you want to apply for, like, you know, nearly everyone wants to be a concept artist or a visual development artist these days, because that's kind of like, you know, cool and you can do whatever you want. But that means there's so many people applying. It's very hard to have a portfolio that will be so impressive that you will just immediately be hired as a concept artist or a designer. But what you find is you might get hired in background, and then your personal work might be shown to somebody who's developing a project, who goes like, oh wow, that's absolutely perfect for my project. And then you might get into concept design or visual development for that project easier that way. So really how you apply to get into the studio, I think is a thing worth considering. Like, you know, it's really hard to find layout artists these days. you know, and what other departments would be hard to staff up at the moment?
Yeah,
So.
even just posing, character posing rather than animation. And there's a lot of positions that are in demand. But the other thing I'd say, just more broadly and more generally, is like I've just done the last 2 days an emotional intelligence for creative industries course. That was something that I did with one of the co-founders of the studio here, Paul, and our head of production, Katja, because it's something that I've been conscious that's been missing. Like, you learn how to draw and you learn how to animate, and you learn how to make movies or whatever in college, but the biggest part that it takes is working together. Like, I've had partnerships my whole life, like myself and Ross working together since we were teenagers, and that has allowed me to create stuff that's more than I could ever create on my own. So I always advise people, team up and collaborate, because that's what the industry is. It's a lot of collaboration, a lot of partnerships. Very few people are making a living making their own movies from home. They're teaming up at least with a sound designer or an editor or something, even if they do all the animation themselves. So for me, that's the biggest advice, because most people who want to get into it are focused on the craft side, but there's a whole emotional intelligence and ability to collaborate that everybody, if you get your foot in the door of the studio as whatever the job is, in betweener, if you've got good emotional intelligence and you're somebody who's good to collaborate with, you're going to rise through the ranks so fast.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And that collaboration obviously goes in the creative spaces, in the animation, in the editing, in the sound design and everything, but also you're working hand in hand with these voice actors. And I'd love to dig a bit more into what the process looks like when it comes to putting voices to what you're putting in the film. So what big picture, what does the casting process look like for your voiceover actors? And specifically to Wolfwalkers, I mean, Eva Whitaker is such a standout in this. I'd love to hear how you kind of landed on her for the role as well.
She's so great.
Well, I suppose, I mean, I can talk about Wolfwalkers, but maybe Tomm can fill us in on how it happened with Song of the Sea then and Secret of Kells too, because there might have been differences for that. But with Wolfwalkers, we had certain names in mind for the characters as we were developing them, like Sean Bean. Even the early concepts of Bill had Sean Bean in mind. He looks very much like the character. So really, when we approached Sean Bean and he said yes, we were over the moon, because otherwise we didn't really have a plan B. But as regards, say, like Honor and Eva playing the parts of Robin and Maeve, we contacted Louise Kiley Casting, who is a casting agency up in Dublin, and she's like very, very professional what she does. She has like contacts all around the UK and Ireland and probably further afield as well, I'm not sure. But we gave her basically a description of the kind of character that Robin and Maeve were, and kind of gave her an age gap and talked a bit about what accents and like some of the background of the personality and that. So Louise knew exactly like what kind of group to aim for, what kind of age group and what parts of England or Ireland or anything like that. And so for Honor, or for Robin, it was a little bit easier in that, like, the UK has so many more people than Ireland. There's a massive population, and also like child drama agencies over there are like huge. Like, whereas in Ireland, we only have 4.5 million people here in the Republic, I think. So it's much harder to find child actors, I would think. And when we described Maeve, we wanted someone who sounded like they came from the country, didn't have like a town accent or a city accent, because that wouldn't suit Maeve's personality. So Louise had to contact kind of school drama groups that were outside of the city, so that like the kids would have like an authentic country accent and not sound like that they were too trained or too like eloquent or fantastic diction and all that kind of stuff that usually is trained through drama groups. So really, Eva just decided through her school drama society to put in an audition tape, and like it was just a pure fluke that she did that, because otherwise I don't know who like the second choice was. But really, Eva was so perfect for the part of Maeve. She had that husky voice, she had that kind of boundless energy, even like her speech pattern had loads of highs and lows and so much energy in it, and like it was so varied. Really, we kind of always imagined Maeve was like a little bit of a hyper, like rascal, like with like all that boundless energy there. So Eva just jumped off the screen. We were probably sent about maybe 50 tapes for Robin, 50 tapes for Maeve, and we went through them all. And I think with us knowing the characters so well, when we saw Honor and Eva's tapes, we just knew that it kind of like they had that spark, you know.
Yeah.
And then Tomm, what do you think for the other two films? So?
Yeah, well, just still on Wolfwalkers, I mean, there was a sort of a second pass where we met the actors. It was different, and looking at a tape, we had to just chat to them, and they auditioned again with us and read from it. And definitely Eva, so talented, and Honor too, of course. But by the end of it, yeah, the girls were telling us what the characters would do rather than us telling them. They really got to know the characters, and they had a friendship that we caught in tape. I think that is some of the heart of the movie. Those two girls getting to know each other, surrounded by all the technicians and everything around them, was lovely. For the adult actors as well, you know, it can be challenging. Like, one of the parts that we found hard to cast was Oliver Cromwell, the Lord Protector. And his part ended up diminished a lot. Originally, he was going to have to carry a lot more of the movie. There was scenes, you know, more scenes and stuff with him. And for that example, Simon McBurney was, I think, in a movie with Brad Pitt or somebody, and he went to the premiere of our previous movie, which was produced by Angelina Jolie. And at the premiere of that movie, met Nora and one of our editors, Dara Byrne, and they thought he would be a good choice for it. So, you know, it's unusual. Some people that you meet like that just through industry, and other people you meet through auditions and stuff. But the most important thing for me on all three movies was to have all the actors together. A lot of animation is recorded here, there, and everywhere, kind of by Zoom or Skype or whatever, in booths, you know. And I can understand sometimes that's the only way to do it, but if possible, I'd rather have all the actors together on the day. 5:22. Oh, good evening. Thanks, Mickey Mouse. That's my watch. Just decided to tell me what time it was. Granddaughter loves my watch. But anyway, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. So it's just nice to have them all together. So they're bouncing off each other in real time, and they're acting against each other rather than acting against me or the voice director or something. So that was something we did for all the movies in this kind of trilogy anyway. And I think it's 5:22. I think it's good.
I think it's 5:22.
5:22.
But you know the way for Wolfwalkers, Tomm, we kind of had very much an idea of what actors we would approach, really. For the adults, for the kids, we went through the casting director. But for the other two films, was there parts that you just didn't have someone in mind and you just said casting agents?
We had no casting agent. I didn't have a casting agent on Song of the Sea or Secret of Kells, so we were much smaller at the time, especially for Secret of Kells. And a lot of the extra voices we met were true. Like, there was a guy, David Stone, who was working on a TV series with us, and he had friends who were in like the kind of stand-up community around Ireland, and that's how we got like Paul Tylak and Liam Hurricane and a lot of the extra voices that were kind of comedians who could do a lot of accents, which I don't think is cool anymore. We wouldn't do that anymore. We'd actually cast people who have the accent really, rather than an impersonator now. But I think that was the way at the time, we cast who we could, you know. And then on Song of the Sea, we were just unbelievably lucky, really. I think Secret of Kells had put us on the map, and I literally reached out to like one person per part, and they all said yes. So like Brendan Gleeson was happy to come back, Lisa Hannigan was happy to give it, you know, so everybody. And the little boy in Song of the Sea who played Ben was so talented, and we discovered through a TV show. He was in a live action TV show with Chris O'Dowd, and we were doing the animation for that show, and that's how we met him. So pure luck. And my little nephew played the younger version of him, so that we didn't have to go too far to find it.
Not too far for him. That's great though. I mean, obviously each casting process and each new project comes with a different way of going about it. Across the board though, I mean, Ross, you mentioned that Ava in particular, just the eccentricity that she brought to her voice. Are there any things that make a great voice performance in your book? Like if you're just like running through a few things on your checklist, what are you looking for? What really makes you excited about a voice that you want to work with?
Well, I mean, for Wolfwalkers, it's because we had the whole character kind of the personality formed in our head of this character. Like, we've been working on the script for, I think, 5 years beforehand. So we kind of knew the character very much inside our head. So really, like, we didn't even probably need to see the video. The video wasn't so important, but just to hear the vocals. And if you can then picture, because we would have had like character designs done for the characters, and if you could picture that character talking with that voice, then I think that's the thing that clicks. That's the little box that that gets ticked in that. Like I was going to say that Maeve's voice needed to be like really, really animated, really energetic, and lots of highs and lows, and like, so much life and energy in there. But that isn't to say that every animated character would need a voice like that. Say, for instance, the head housekeeper, who was voiced by Nora Toomey, one of the directors here. She needed to have this very, very monotonous, kind of dull, boring, like, yes, I'm gonna talk like this in one tone and really slow, because we had a character that had to embody Robin's future life, having been a housekeeper all of her life, with all of the life sucked out of her, so like I'm sure any actor would probably, like a really good actor would be able to play both parts, have like a really energetic voice with lots of ups and downs, and then also a really monotonous, boring voice. But really, if we just come across a tape or a casting audition tape that has that, and we can close our eyes and we can imagine our character speaking with that voice, then I think that's the thing that makes us go for it.
Yeah, fair enough. We have an audience question that came in here from Millie Brooke. Wondering if you've ever been inspired by a voice to change the way that you might animate the character.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, could you speak to an instance where
even more than just how we animate the character? I mean, Brendan Gleeson, when he played the dad in Song of the Sea, we'd written him as kind of as if he was drinking and kind of completely checked out and absent. And Brendan brought a lot more depth to it. He didn't want him to be like drinking. He just wanted him to be in grief. And we had model sheets and all where he was holding like a little whiskey nagging all the time and all this stuff. And we had to change all that because Brendan brought better depth to the character. And he felt it was a bit cliched and corny, and he didn't want to play the part like that. So we changed him. And then I would say that like hearing the girls' voices and having the video of them acting it out definitely influenced how they behaved on screen in the animation of Wolfwalkers. And it particularly when you see things like the wolf version of the girls, that there's something of Eva's energy even when she's a wolf, you know what I mean? So it's kind of a two-hander. She brings so much with her voice performance and her physicality, but also the animator takes that and runs with it and turns her into like a cartoon wolf. So the animators are kind of interpreting that performance and bringing something of themselves to it as well. So absolutely.
Yeah, I remember Honor played Robin's part as like a little bit brave when she needs to be, but also a little bit timid because she's always been told what to do, and being forced down by society. So I remember like her little kind of eye darts, like where she would look away, or if she was in trouble, if she was even looked at by Lord Protector, she would kind of look away and stuff. So the animators would get sometimes facial cues off looking at the performance of Honor and bring that into the animation. So it does. I mean, you see that in a lot of making of animated movies where the animators will be looking at like, famous actors doing the part, and will be trying to get in those characteristics. So that I think happens across the board. But yeah, it would even get into character design. Like, I'd say our character designs were fairly well formed, but we would have then, like, once we had picked our actors for that, I remember Federico, one of the main character designers here, was doing the Lord Protector, and Lord Protector was a very, very hard character to fully nail down, because we didn't want him to be like a typical kind of two-dimensional baddie. We wanted to have like not a huge big strong man, but have some kind of like sensibility to him, or a little bit of like fragility, like, so that he was a real human being, a real man. And I remember Federico was looking at Simon McBurney and looking at him playing different parts and trying to get some of the mannerisms and even like the head stoop or the posture of Simon McBurney into the character design. So really, it was hugely influential for that character in particular. So yeah, it can have effects the whole way through the process.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's such a beautiful process. I'm just going to run through a few more audience questions to wrap things up here. But speaking to what that actual process looks like, Victor Power asks simply, how long does it take to record and do production and to complete a film? I imagine that it takes quite a while.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
recording of the voices is really fast. Like I think we did most of them in a week. There was like 3 different week-long sessions with the girls. One which was a script before it was rewritten. The October, which was great because we kind of got to know the girls, and then we had a second session with just them, and then a third one which was really just the second one was with all of them, and then the third one was just pickups later. But we had them all together for about a week, and we all stayed together in a little cool little recording studio in the center of Ireland that had been used for bands and stuff, but everyone could stay and eat dinner together. So it felt like after a week we'd made this huge leap forward with the movie because animation is so glacial. So that and the couple of days recording the orchestra are out of all proportion to the rest of it because we spent about 2 or 3 years on the animation and the visuals, but the voice recording was more or less done in a week with little bits of pickups and stuff afterwards, and the music and everything was recorded over a course of 2 weeks at the end, and then there's like this 2 years in the middle where everybody's drawing, and it's a lot of work day by day, though it seems breakneck. When you work in animation, it's so funny, you're stressed, oh, we need more time, but we spend like years on things.
Fair enough, fair enough. Considering the last year, Brian Wayman asks if you've been working with talent or finding ways to work with talent from home studios during the pandemic. What's that process look like for you?
Yeah, it's amazing. There's a big TV show that we're doing at the moment for Apple and a big feature film for Netflix. And they're both like some of the most starry casts we've ever had and the most varied cast we had between like British, American, Irish actors. And they're all doing it from home, which is something I've never done. And that's why I kind of made a point of like how I've only ever directed, obviously I co-directed this with Ross, but I've only ever directed people when they're all together. So I'm getting a lot of free direction of talented actors working off each other, or young actors being inspired by being with like a big famous established actor, and I get a lot of that for free, whereas Nora and Morris, the directors of the shows that are in production now, they're going to have to do a lot of work to get each actor to record like this in a booth or whatever from home, bring all the energy, and then go to the editor and cut it with the other voice and see how that all plays, or maybe give the actor playback in their can so they can hear what the other actor's done. So it's much more challenging, but it does mean that actors are available a lot more and there's more time spent recording and re-recording, partly because it's necessary, but also partly because these projects have bigger budgets and more changes to scripts and stuff as they go along. It's been definitely interesting. I'm only watching from the outside, observing from the outside how it's done. But
do
I'd say
actors
it's hard.
actually have like the recording equipment at home, or is it brought
Yeah,
in?
some of them are working from home, and some of them, like, because we're working for big studios like Apple and Netflix, they're bringing them what they need to
Oh,
work
well,
from their
okay.
bedroom or whatever, you know.
Yeah, yeah. From my vantage point, I've been seeing a lot of that in the last year. Just the home studio recordings, the project sending the necessary equipment. But glad that you've been finding ways to stay busy the last year at least. And it
Oh,
sounds like
yeah.
you have some exciting things in the pipeline. As a final question for you, we got a lot of questions coming in about where you find your actors. We've kind of touched on that. It's a mix of going to agencies and casting directors, of random ways that people come into your life and you go from there. But we do have a question from Nathan Dube. What are some of the more entry-level gigs budding voice actors should target in order to eventually be on the radar or up for consideration for something like Wolfwalkers? Are you watching commercials and listening for voices, or what advice do you have to that end?
There's a site that I used to go to a lot more often than I do now called Voice Bank here in Ireland, where I would normally just listen because some of the actors have brilliant, they're just fun to listen to. They update their reels all the time, and you'd have an eye on people. And then if it isn't a character part that we have a very strong idea who we want, yeah, the best thing is just to have an up-to-date reel online, and if people are looking, or obviously a good agent, because I mean, we work through casting agents now. We didn't used to. So I'd say if you're looking for, like, people used to contact me directly, And some of the local talent that we've used in a lot of our films as kind of extra voices, they're all just people that contacted us directly. But you wouldn't get that far contacting me directly because I'll forget about you again. I think it's better to be with an agent, a good agent.
Yeah, be careful there, Tom. You might get like 200 emails next week.
It doesn't really. I'll just go, oh, thanks, I'm not making a movie at the moment and not think of you. But when it comes around, like, we have a good relationship with Louise Kiley now. She's done a lot of stuff with us, and we also work with CAA, and they rep some of the kind of bigger stars, and Casa Rosa in London as well.
Yeah.
But I suppose if you're just starting off, it's pretty hard because, like, you know, you can't just go along to a casting agency like that and go, hey, represent me. Like, they choose who they represent. So
well,
I really don't know
think
how.
Voice Bank, I think if you can get on something like Voice Bank where it's more character actors, I don't know what the equivalent is internationally, but a lot of the actors on Voice Bank are not like super well known, and all you're listening to is their show reel, as it were. And the actors that we picked that way, they weren't like massively established, but they just had the right, but they were extras. They weren't like main characters, but we got to meet them and we would have them in mind that way.
Yeah, no, that's great to know. I mean, everything is a stepping stone in this industry. So something like Voice Bank, for those watching today, be sure to check that out. All right, well, I'm looking through my questions here, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but I really do appreciate you lending your minds and your ear for this last half hour or so. Tomm and Ross, congrats on Wolfwalkers and all the love it's been getting on the Oscar nomination as well. But stay well out there, and I can't wait to see what you guys do next.
Thanks very much,
everyone, for listening in. It was really nice to chat to you virtually. Thanks, Ben. Take it easy, guys.
All right, take it easy. Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye.